And live. Hello and welcome to Crossroads of Cognizance. I am Dahlia Rose over here on the East Coast, holding down the fort at Crystal Cognizance. And with me, I have.
I'm Katrina Rasbold, and I am on the West Coast in Jingle Springs, California. So if anything happens, Dahlia is going to know about it 3 hours before me.
It's coming.
Brace yourself.
Right. So that is exactly what we're here for. We are here to talk about, the week before and sort of everything that transpired previously and how we navigated it, the kind of impact it had on the people that we know and love and serve. And so, if you're with us for the first time, welcome. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you're on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, give us a follow on our Facebook page. And here we are just to go over the metaphysical, magical, crazy happenings and some interesting underlying reasoning and thoughts. So with that, we will kick things off. And as you're coming in, make sure that you're leaving those comments so we can respond. So, Katrina and I were talking a little bit earlier about, so we're in the period of Samhain. Um, I was pronouncing that Samhain for a really long time. So, so I was glad
That's
I get
okay, rookie. Good job.
So, being in Samhain, and many parts of the United States celebrated Halloween last night, and in both Mexican culture and other Hispanic cultures, they are celebrating Dia de los Muertos. And so
Kay
all of
Bryant was
these.
we actually celebrated with Kay Bryant last night.
Oh, nice. Very
She
cool.
was there. Yeah, her partner was there. We had a huge ritual. It was great. Had a huge ritual the night before. Dahlia, it was great. We got to get you here for these. They're
I
so much fun.
know. I gotta get something that gives me miles or something. But
Yeah.
so that's where we're kicking things off. So tell us more about that celebration, Katrina.
Last night was the first time that I went into ritual since Llamas of 2019.
Wow.
And what I do, because the gal that does the rituals for me, I've got two actually. One is Tammy, and Tammy is hardcore, long time priestess. I mean, she ran Pagan Pride. She ran the Fairy Festival. She had public rituals with hundreds of people. She's a professional to the extreme, and she does our Saturday rituals. Figui, however, is new to this process. Now, she's done rituals before, but as far as being the face of Cusp, which is our spiritual path, and the face of the Crossroads rituals, this has only been happening for about a year and a half now. And no, it was Llamas was 2 years, I think. Am I counting right? I think so. Yes. Llamas was 2 years. And so she was one of our girls. And so was Kay, in fact. When we were running our coven for about 22 years, we would have phases of people coming in. So we would have stable membership, and then it would seem like all of a sudden everybody's moving, everybody's doing something different, everybody's going to a new state, or something's coming up, so that we're shrinking, and then we'll get a new wave of people in. One of the waves of people that came in was this group of people, young people who were in their oh gosh, barely, like late teens, early 20s. They were such babies.
Baby
And
witches.
one of them was Kay, and one of them was Figui, and we had, a bunch of others, like six of them trolled in, like boom. And Figui stayed with us and learned so much of what we do. And so when it came time that Eric and I were fully retiring and saying, we're not going to do rituals anymore, we've done this for 20 some years, we're tired, it's time to pass the throne over to somebody else. Figui stepped in, and she has just done a fabulous job. And so I tended to not go into ritual, because a lot of the people that come to our rituals came to the rituals that Eric and I did.
Right.
And I didn't want to be them looking at me to see if I'm approving of what she's doing, or
Oh. Mhm.
as though there's an overseeing that's happening. So I kind of stepped back. And last night was the first time I had gone in since then. And she just was stellar. She did a great ritual. It was one that Eric and I could have put together ourselves. It was that nuanced because we're really big on pageantry, Eric and I. We love theatrics. Not that we develop a fake English accent when we go into ritual or anything, but we like people to have things to look at. We like it to be visually attractive
I
and
am absolutely the
interactive,
same.
just gets to get their attention. And she just nailed it. She did a fantastic job. So we had, and then right before that, this is fun. Right before Figwe's rituals, in the hour before the ritual, Eric does what's called the cusp attunement. And he uses Reiki energy and a video. So you've got audio because he's playing music, you've got video because it's a movie of clips he's put together. And then it's him doing the Reiki energy to infuse each person with the energy of that Sabbath. And
Nice.
so you're watching all of these images of Samhain come up and all these images of Beltane come up or whatever it might be. You've got this dark sort of Samhain music, and Eric's behind you putting the energy into you and giving you a blessing. And it's just really beautiful. It's really
Wow.
nice. So that's my long explanation.
But that sort of pomp and circumstance is very much a part of so many types of rituals. I mean, if you look at indigenous peoples and like their powwows and things like that, when they're getting
Hmm.
into um, shape shifting into the animals and forms and energies that they're bringing into the ritual in order to honor them, it's big, it's showy, and it does so much for us to be able to open our hearts. So,
Hmm.
like you said, it's not fake. It's fully bringing everything in, and I think that people just, we don't have that in everyday life. So to shortchange it when for something that's really meaningful would be it would suck. So,
Well, it's really, also having done this for 40 years, I have a lot of memories of being in. There's a cat here, that's why I'm moving so much. Um, of having memories of being in rituals where I just wanted to eat my foot off to get out of the trap of this ritual because it's just droning on and on and on, and nobody's moving, nobody's dancing, nobody's doing anything. They're just preaching at you.
yeah, it's like a
And
lecture.
oh, God, no.
Yeah, or a sermon.
Yeah, yeah, like that.
But when you're into it, man, I mean, we were running rituals and different ceremonies at Crystal Cognizance. I was about to say Crossroads of Cognizance, which is not a place; it's here. But at Crystal Cognizance, and there were copper pyramids and crystal skulls, and breathe and move and go through your experience. Don't just listen to me talk. I mean, come to the YouTube channel for that. But you know, really get into it and have your own experience. And I think that unfortunately in some spaces it's a bit more controlled. They don't want you to get into it, and they don't want you to go get too big. There's already so few places we can do that. I think it's important to bring that into ceremony.
I think
um
so too. And like I said, I'm not a fan of making it into a recreated Ren Fair or
no.
some sort of uh, I don't know, fake production.
Right.
But see, I was also raised in those old Pentecostal churches where we felt constrained if we go to church someplace else and they're just sitting there listening and standing up like robots to sing and sitting back down. We were the ones with the call and the response and the hallelujahs and stand up and testify in the middle of the sermon.
Oh yeah.
you
Yep.
know
I got both sides of that aisle. Raised Catholic, and when I first got to Pentecostal church, I was like, "Why is that? Do we need to call the ambulance? That person's on the floor, and all they do is come over with a blanket
that
and
was
cover them up." And
me.
I was like, "Wait a minute, wait a minute! That person looks
When the
injured.
spirit of the Lord is upon you, girl.
Are you sure this is not a heart attack?" Or they're down there trembling and shaking. But wild times, Wild
Well, that's
times.
why I can say when people ask me, how are you sure that the energy that you're working with is the real God? It's because I've felt it in so
Hmm.
many different places and so many different situations. And if you
Absolutely.
have to ask somebody that, you have never felt the energy of the real God and how, goddess, energy, creator, how pervasive that is. It has a strong identity. You will not mistake it for anything else.
Absolutely. Completely transcends anything you could get from another person. And you're enveloped by the whole thing. I'm reading Praying Like a Shaman right now, and it talks about being overcome with emotion, and that's how you know you're connecting. And there's the author speaks of a tribe of people. I think I may be butchering the name, so I apologize, but I think they're called the Huey Cole, or the Huey Chol. And every time they get into that space of connecting with the divine creator, they're moved, they cry. It's rare to see them not cry, and because of the intensity of the connection and the experience. And it sounds like, based on what you were talking about earlier with the ofrendas and things that were taking place during the ceremony, I'm hoping you can sort of describe that a bit further for us, as people were enjoying it and the energy was getting kicked up.
Oh, sure. We had two different things going on in regard to that. Now, Fig, we set up a really fascinating divination altar that was kind of off to the side of the circle. So there was a part of the ritual where you left the circle, went between two guardians, and passed into the what you call into the underworld. And then
Oh,
she
thank
had
you,
this.
Eric. Sorry, he
She
said
had
he
this.
gave me the correct
Yeah,
pronunciation. We
there you
call.
go.
Thank you. Sorry.
And then she had this beautiful antique mirror there in the dark with a candle. And she had little pieces of cardboard with the names of tarot cards on each one. So you went there and you looked in the mirror and you connected with your ancestors and you reached into the bowl and you pulled out the message that they wanted to give to you and took it back from
Wow.
the underworld into the circle. So that was really beautiful and powerful. And then inside, in what we call the kukui room, which is one of our classrooms that is especially haunted, Gladys and Debbie, and I hope I don't leave anybody else, Jason and Rafa and Jessica, and some of our students from your class, in fact, had set up these beautiful ofrendas, and um, they had one that was dedicated to Santa Muerte and one that was dedicated to Our Lady of Guadalupe, and they were these elaborate, beautiful, multi-tiered altars, and people came and put their pictures of their loved ones. That was a project Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, where people would put the pictures of their loved ones on the altars. They had the trail of marigolds to lead the dead up to the altar. They had the food offerings there. There was so much copal burning; it looked like a frat house. I mean, it was just this thick smoke rolling out of the room. It was unbelievable. I can't even describe the power that was in that room. It was so thick.
Wow.
And so since we did that, and since we had the Samhain with the parting and opening of the veils and everything, it's the spirit activity has been off the hook. Now Crossroads is always very spiritually active. It's a very haunted place, which was a
Hmm.
big selling point for us when we rented it or came in to get this particular place. It was that it was just so busy. It was incredibly busy. And since all of this happened this weekend, I don't know how we're going to put all of that back into the package because it was just really intense.
Oh, we have at least until tomorrow, I think. Because it's just the 31st through the 2nd, or is it different for
Yes, I'm
Samhain?
sorry. I was reading comments and I got lost. I'm like, she's got this. I'm just going to read. Yes, correct. But I don't work today and tomorrow.
Well, it sounds
Well,
like
if
it
we
was.
got pictures of it that I can put up on the website, I can't convey the energy because that was just so wow. But you can at least see the beautiful altars that they created.
Here's a great question, and actually, I didn't know if we were going to get to talk about it. What are your thoughts on taking pictures of altars? So, I have heard two schools of thought, and absolutely not, and it's okay if you get permission. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think you should ever take a picture of someone's altar
Okay,
without asking permission.
okay,
I do know that in the instance, I feel differently about a family altar or an ancestor altar than I do a working altar. I
okay,
don't feel like we should take pictures of our spell work when we're
okay.
doing spell work on our altars and putting that up on social media and, oh, look, somebody did me wrong, so here we're going to do this now. Because I believe that bleeds. I think everybody who looks at that takes a piece of that energy away.
Right. Or
And
puts
so I'm
theirs in, maybe.
Yeah, well, there's that too. And also the idea that it's a bit of ego to say, oh, look what I did. Isn't this a powerful spell? I still believe in that old witch's pyramid of to know, to dare, to will, and to be silent. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that when we do our strongest work, we're quiet about it. It's
Mm-hmm.
like locker rooms. The people who aren't talking about it are the people who are doing it, and everybody else is just putting on a show. So I wouldn't take pictures of altar work, if it's your spell work. If you have a particular beautiful altar arrangement for a Sabbath, or your personal altar is set up in a particular way and it moves you and you want to share that, I
Mm-hmm.
think you should.
Okay.
But I also think that you should shield it. I think you should weave spell work into the sharing
Mm-hmm.
so that those who are not supposed to see it don't, that it's protected.
Right.
Uh, but Ofrendas, I think everybody takes pictures of their Ofrendas.
Oh,
I think it's
absolutely.
just what you do. That this is my family. Look at my fam.
Yeah,
And
and then, tapping into the collective family, right? Because I mean, even
right.
as we're not blood related, we have these connections. So that makes perfect sense. And I can definitely identify with, building crystal grids and saying, hey, here's a photo, connect with it if you need it. So that makes perfect sense.
Yes. But in that case, you're purposefully giving it away.
Hmm.
That's your intention of saying, hey, I made this crystal grid because I feel like everybody out there is struggling and I want to give you some grounding, or I want to give you a boost of energy. Here's the grid, find it, pull from it what you need. That's something completely different. I think that's a beautiful way to operate. Uh, but if you are doing a private working
Yep.
that you really want to have the punch that you need, we're going to keep that out of the pictures and off of social media. Now, that being said, I will take pictures of my work for my own reference.
Right.
If I need to remember how to do something, or I'm putting notes in my book of shadows or something like that, then I'll take a picture for me. But sharing, we're big sharers now, so a lot of
Yeah.
my personal work is not going to be on my Instagram page.
Makes perfect sense. Now we have a great question in the comments section. I want to say your name's pronounced Shannon, and if it is, I
Shannon.
absolutely love the spelling of that. I mean,
Oh,
that's
she's our
awesome.
girl. You would love Shannon. You would love Shannon so hard. I got to tell you, the way I met Shannon, by the way, she contacted me cold, just out of the blue, and she said I would go into explaining who I am, but just Google me. Like, oh God, I love this woman.
Right.
No,
That
we've
sounds
been friends for a
awesome.
really long time. She's amazing.
Well, Shannon is helping us into a perfect segue from ofrendas and altars and things and setup to one of the things that I know you wanted to discuss tonight, which was connecting with spirit and your
Mhm.
ancestors. So why don't we delve into that? Do you have any tips or
I do, but I feel like I'm hogging the whole show here. I don't want to step
ah
on anything you're doing. Here's the beauty that we don't. I know you weren't a random crazy. You're whenever she writes an email, her whole soul is in the email. It's like a zip file in 7 words. Okay. She's a very powerful, wonderful presence.
But that's the kind of energy you want to connect with in terms of a person. They're
Yeah.
getting their whole authentic self.
She, she is the most authentic human I've probably ever known. So
Oh,
anyway, yes, there is, and it's a hard one, and people don't like to do this, but I make people do this. So, in our society, there is a huge push toward productivity. There is a huge push toward engaging and being present and plugging into the things you do every day, to your job, your vocation, your avocation, whatever it is that you do and who you are in the world, what creates your value that you are putting out there.
right.
In our society, that is tops. How are you earning your way in this world? Everybody wants to know. And so we have this ongoing push. However, humans are not meant to do that. And so we have this ongoing. There I am. Hi. I sounded good. Anyway, so so what I want to get across to us about this time, or to everybody about this time, is that at Yule, when the spark of light returns to the sky, when the days gradually start to get longer, we begin our climb up out of the dark to come to that place of summer solstice when we have the longest day. And throughout that time, we begin to plan, what are we going to plant in the year? We begin to think toward spring, new beginnings. We begin to think toward summer. What do I want it to look like? Even at kids at Christmas, we're encouraged to make lists of what we want.
Great.
And so everything about December 21st and around that time is centered on new beginnings, new births. You know, we have the birth of Christ is moved to that time to be an appropriate time. We have the birth of the sun in the sky. And so we start thinking about, what do I want to build? What do I want to have happen? And we work toward that and work toward that and work toward that. And then we have our harvest in the fall that happens. And Samhain identifies the end of the harvest in the ancient agricultural system. So the plant beds are burned. Anything in the field is released. If it's in the field on November 1st, it's poison. We're letting it go. And so it's a huge psychological exercise to say, I'm going to stop wanting. I'm going to stop coveting outcomes. I'm going to stop harvesting. I'm going to let go. I'm going to release. And I'm going to be still. Because October 31st to December 21st, those 6 weeks are a time of being fallow. It's a time of resting and waiting and considering and evaluating. It's a great time to just be still and not have to produce. And most of us aren't in a situation where we can do that. I do schedule time off from the store, usually at least 2 weeks during that time, so that I can be still. And even though, sure, you know, you lose a lot of money in retail if you're not open, you know, ideally you're open and you have customers and things like that. But for me, you know, both Eric and I want a time where we can just be still and collect ourselves and get ready for the next year. And so we do that between usually around Christmas, New Year's. So my hint for what to do during the time after Samhain is chill out, be still. You're coming up on Christmas where you're going to have all this holiday rush. You're going to have all these demands on you. You're going to have stress. Just take some time and be still and enjoy the quiet for a little while. Find the quiet, create the quiet in your life.
Well, that's perfect for the space to be available for your ancestors to come in and say something to you. Because if you're too busy, I mean, most of the time people are like, I want to hear from my ancestors. I want to do this. I want to do that. And it's like, well, you haven't stopped your life long enough to hear them. And that's it. You know, they're there. They're like, you know, waiting. But you're expecting it to be that they burst through your door and they stop your plans, and it's in the subtle whispers of the silence and the how about you recuperate enough from the stresses of life to be able to reconnect, or rather flip those switches of connection back on, because when we get buried under life, you turn those off. So
You are so right. Our ancestors, our spirit guides, whatever otherworldly guidance we receive, it ain't the Kool-Aid man. They're not just going to burst through in this huge production. If you drive them to the point that they have to do that to talk to you, you're not going to like the outcomes that you get.
can you
And
imagine?
oh man, yeah. I can. It was a flaming glory.
Oh,
But
yeah.
what you have to do is make space for that, and that's what the ofrendas are about. They're about, and for instance, Shannon, she has, I'll guarantee you, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm betting she has an ancestor altar up all the time.
Oh,
And
Shannon, can we get some feedback on that?
yeah, come on, Shannon. I would put money on that. But when we have, and our sweetheart Gladys, she has a permanent ancestor altar. And so having that space always there, and it's not just having the altar, it's ongoing,
Shannon said
pouring
every single
out,
day.
see, pouring out the whiskey for grandpa, you know, putting out the cakes for your auntie that you love, that she enjoys, reaching further back and saying, through my history, my ancestors were from Germany, let's say, so here are some little German cakes that I'm going to give to you that you might have eaten 300 years ago.
Yeah.
Just being in, oh, there's my girl. Just being present, being plugged in for that. So make that space for them to talk to you and be still with that. Be close with that energy so that it has time to talk to you before Kool-Aid Man happens.
And I think because I think everybody approaches this a little differently. For those of you who, you're like, oh, be still. If you have to engage and re-engage, and you just have, um, you know, a, a hard time sitting still, at least make the intentional time. So if that is 10 minutes in the morning, or um, you know, if you can't take the hour or and change, I will say for me, when I'm connecting, the easiest time to do it is when I first wake up,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
it involves lighting a candle. Like, that is the focus. I find that fire gives energy to most situations, and so lighting a candle and saying, please join me. You'll often find it's as simple as a please join me, and then it can be as complex. I did a stint of time where I was like, you know what, I really need to be more focused about my ancestors in particular. I'm always trying to connect to the galactic realms, and the past lives, and the what's happening globally, and then I'm like, oh, and families over here. So I started doing that a bit more intentionally, and they'll give you beautiful words to use to bring them in. I actually ended up receiving a personal prayer that was about getting wisdom and giving gratitude. And so now it's sort of an opening sequence. But, until that time, you can simply light that candle and say, hey, I'm here. Thank you. And if you've got something for me in the next 5 minutes, wonderful. If not, I'll see you tomorrow. Like, that's really as deep and wonderful as it has to be.
That's very true. And when people went in and saw the beautiful ofrendas that our team created, um, nobody could keep from being moved. It was
Yeah.
just, it wrapped around you in this incredible magical envelope. But you don't have to go to elaborate extremes like we did. I say we when I did nothing except point to the room and say, have at it. They did all of the work, and they did a fantastic job. But you don't have to set aside an entire room for this. Just any flat surface is an altar, basically. And put up your little pictures, put out a couple of dishes. It doesn't have to be a huge arrangement, just to honor that day-to-day interaction. And it's very grounding. It gets you back into yourself. It gets
Yes.
you to your personal core, to follow the line of your ancestors back for just a few minutes every day. It's like Mufasa told Simba, remember who you are and stand in that truth. And that'll give you like you're saying, a foundation for the rest of the day. If you do it in the morning when you're receptive coming out of sleep, it really works.
Uh, oh, guided meditation is another great way of connecting. We had Linda Wilson kind of
Mm-hmm.
commenting to say she uses guided meditations. Is a great way to do it. I can't say that there's a wrong way to do it. There are ways that won't work. So, obligatory connections, or forced moments, or and then if you're personally worn out, not taking care of yourself, it may be harder. But gratitude and genuine I want to use, stammering on the word sacrifice, because it's not my favorite, but it is an offering. If you're like, man, all I have is 5 minutes, that's going to be so much more of a giving in that moment to your ancestors than if you than talking about the person that does the hour-long pomp and circumstance just for show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're sort of giving everybody here a spectrum of opportunity for connecting with your ancestors, whether it is ofrendas and Dia de los Muertos versus very simple,
Mm-hmm.
permanent or impermanent altar, depending on your circumstances. I don't think that there is a general rule on that sort of thing. Um, but what we're saying overall is, don't let anything stop you. There
Right.
are no excuses. If you're like, I just don't have a table, put it on the floor. If you have kids and animals, maybe you put it away periodically so that nobody's getting burned by the candle, or whatever the case is, or eating the offerings off the thing.
And it's really about also honoring your close relatives. When we think of ancestors, we think of, Gregor the Magnificent from, 27 layers of generations back. Think about Nana, man. You know, you gotta get in with the loved ones you have that have passed. And this year, people have lost people like mad.
Yeah.
And so for me, my Ofrenda wasn't just, and Gladys and I have taught classes on this, in fact, so I know she agrees with me. Your Ofrenda, or your family altar, it's not just blood relatives either. I
No.
have friends on my altar. And of course, Eric's mother, who has passed. And so we have just the people you love, the people you care about that are gone. We have a shrine to one of our friends in our store, she was so much a part of our life and our magic. And so we have, a permanent shrine to her there. And sometimes I can feel she wants me. We have little purple lights, because she was big on purple. And so I have purple lights throughout her little encasement where her shrine is. And sometimes she wants the lights on, and sometimes she's, no, just let me be still today.
Yeah.
So just go there and tune in and see what's there for you. And if you get no messages for a month, 2 months, you keep your little happy ass going right to that altar,
Right. It's
right?
not about reward. It's about connection. It doesn't matter what you get out of it if it's not messages, or you're not, whatever the case is, but the connection needs to be established. Much
Yeah.
like grounding. You're not, if you're doing it right, you're not going to realize that it's happening, and if you're not doing it all, you'll realize when it's not there.
That is so true. And another thing that people don't think about in regard to ancestor veneration, watch Coco, watch Coco, is it's not always about you.
It's not.
Sometimes it's about them wanting connection with the downline.
Yep.
And we're the ones that
keeping
give them that,
keeping the soul alive.
keeping them
you know
remembered.
um, I think we've talked about that a couple times. I feel like I've said it a couple times, maybe not here, just in general, but how, remembering the souls is what keeps them going, what keeps them alive. And so even as you have generations that have not met their ancestors or their grandparents even, and so on, the importance of handing down those stories and keeping the memory alive is what keeps the soul going. And in both Coco and some of the other movies, I'm trying to think of, there have been other animated films as well where they, you basically end up seeing like a soul disintegrate as people forgot about them. It's a horrible thought. Um, but in all of this connective space, as the veil is thinner, as we are connecting with the divine, there's a other side of all of this that is maybe less in the realm of what we want to connect with, and that is entities and you know uh I'm trying to see here who it was. I think it was Shannon who was asking about how to connect with your ancestors, and we talked about sort of the simple prayers and the intention. You can use tarot cards, you can use pendulums. You want to clean these things and be very intentional and not dive into anything you don't know how to play with. But one thing that people consistently like doing, because you can get it at a toy store and
Oh Lord
Walmart.
help us! I know what you're going to say.
Go for it.
Yep, those damn Ouija boards, man. Is that what you were
Yep.
going to say?
Yeah,
Oh my
absolutely.
gosh! Oh my gosh! So that was back. Now Corby tells a good story about this because she was saying that it's like Parker Brothers decided to sell a chainsaw to kids.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a toy at all.
No,
At all.
no, no. And I've watched so many people get in trouble with that. And again, so often when we're dealing with tools like this, it's all about ego.
Yep.
And the low flying spirits that want to connect with something easily, they often have a lot of intention behind their presence as to why they're there. And unless you're willing to carry the load for some spirit you don't know, it's a tough place to be. And I constantly clean spirits out of people, and I'm waiting for the next 2 weeks or so when all of those jackals that got the Ouija boards out on Halloween come in for me to yank these things out of them that jumped in there.
Yep.
Because yeah, and also the veil was so thin this year.
Yeah, they'll coast right along all the positive ancestor spirits and all that. Oh, okay, let me jump in the background of this. And
Yep.
if you haven't been making the time in the space, there are trickster energies out there. And their whole deal is to take advantage of you. So you're like, oh, I don't know why my ancestors told me to do this thing. It just didn't feel right. It wasn't your ancestors. That's why. Like that was
Yes.
something you don't want to associate yourself with. And I get a lot of people that talk about when they're interacting with spirits how they feel what the spirit went through. And so if you're dealing with these low flying energies, as Katrina mentioned, can you imagine what you're putting yourself through? Especially if you're an empath, you are going to feel the impact of what they did, what they're doing, or that negative presence on a physical level. And it's going to be awful. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to be cranky and angry. You're going to be sad. You're going to be maybe even in some suicidal spaces. We are impacted by these things. We're impacted by the moon, for Pete's sake. You can be impacted by any kind of energy, especially when the veil is thin. So,
So true. So true. And it's, everything. I just completely agree with everything Dahlia just said. And I'm not saying you should never talk to spirits. I'm saying you should be very careful about how you're engaging the spirit world, because the second you make eye contact, you're opening up a pathway, and you need to be trained. You need to be prepared for how to do that. It's not a game. And people say, well, I can't stop. They won't stop talking to me. Well, stop. You are the living being. You are in charge. You are the one who gets to decide and to close off that avenue. If they're there, and your child you don't know how to modulate that. But as you grow, it becomes incumbent upon you to look into how to do that so that you can have a quality of life. But yeah,
Advocate for
I just,
yourself.
oh, two people this week asked me, why don't you do exorcisms anymore? And, the immediate reply is, have you ever seen an exorcism?
Like a real one, not the
Yeah, I
Hollywood
don't want to do
version.
that. I'm old. There's body emissions and stuff involved with exorcisms. People pee and poop and vomit and cry and scream and yeah,
Scratch
give me
and
some of
pull
that,
and
right? Like you think you're going to get that for $65? No. I'm too old. I'm retired.
yeah,
And one of the things I want to point out is a difference in types of entities. Now, when you're talking about a spirit that has possessed somebody, that's very different than the types of entities that I pull out of people with the egg cleansing. What I pull out usually is where a person has had multiple curses or
hmm
crossings and hexings or traumas, and those experiences, those energies in them have started to cooperate with one another
yep,
to create very negative outcomes for that person. So it has become its own sentient energy combined or made. It's almost Frankenstein from
yep,
all of these horrible experiences this person has had. And I can go in there and just yoink that thing out.
yep.
And it's not always that easy, but that's the basic idea. But when you have an actual spirit that's come into somebody and set up housing, or you've got a demon from the blah, blah, blah levels of hell or whatever that's come in, and made itself at home, or been sent there, or been invited there, or whatever it might be, that that's a whole other thing. And I'm just not down for that in my golden years. I'm
Well,
freaking
and
old. Go away.
a lot of people think that it is that level of their circumstances to that level. Something has crawled up from one of the gates of hell and is just wreaking havoc in their life. And I know what I run into is a lot of what you've described, Katrina, but also an accumulation of their own generated negativity that then gains
That
consciousness. And
Wait,
so, like, how do you
right
tell a
there, what
person
she said.
how do you tell a person they're haunting their own house? Well, you just say it. Let's
It's
talk
so
about the job
hard.
we hate and the arguments and the poor attitude and all of that. And
Yeah,
you're not cleansing at all. I mean, we're human, right? We're gonna have these moments where
we
we
are.
are in trouble. But
And
when you do nothing,
Tamara's asking how you tell the difference in the two. And the difference is that 99% of the time, it's the kind that I take out.
yes, the
But
accumulative,
99% of the time, at least 30% of the time, people are going to believe that they are important enough that a demon is going to come up out of his comfy place in hell just to ride around the earth, you know? It's usually anytime a person is well and truly possessed, there has been some dynamic that happened
mhm,
to get that thing in there.
yep.
You did something to welcome it in, or somebody did a lot of work to get it in there.
And I
If it
want to
just is
say
happenstance, then it's probably one of ours.
there are a lot of cultural implications for this as well. So in Hispanic
Mm-hmm.
cultures, it's pretty common. I know I myself have worked with people in some Asian cultures where people are hired to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are a bit more prone to your demon that's coming up out of hell. But um, if you are walking around your house and things have just shifted into a negative space, assume that it's the lighter version. I mean, I would say it's probably less important to distinguish what you're dealing with at first and more important to just deal with it.
Right.
So, get the candles, get the smudging tools, get the four thieves wash, the white vinegar, whatever you're going to do, go ahead and just tackle the problem. And at the
Mhm.
point that you've done everything, then start having the conversation about, okay, maybe this is, out of my pay grade and I need to go seek professional help.
Perfect. Yes, exactly that. That is
So,
exactly true. And again, the chances are really on your side that this is something that is very manageable. And I think of it, and I've used this analogy a lot. I think of it like medicine, where you suspect there's something wrong, you just don't feel right. What are you going to do? Are you not going to go to the doctor because it might be something that'll kill you? Or are you going to go to the doctor and have the doctor say, you need to see a specialist
right.
because this is outside of my level? Always follow through with your spiritual care and make sure that you're getting taken care of in that regard. Or, like Dahlia was saying, that you're taking care of yourself by using the appropriate tools to clean up around you. And also, don't get into those situations. It's exciting to think about going to a Ouija board party until all of a sudden,
No,
you
it's
know,
not.
yeah, you
No,
got
it's not.
somebody sticking around you didn't want there.
Who the hell is excited about that? I mean, aside from, I'm sorry, I guess I got a little passionate about this, but like,
You jumped right up there, huh?
sorry, I
That
just
was
think
cute.
there's a level of responsibility. It's like going to a tattoo party where they're just washing the needle under the sink. Like, what's your problem? I mean, at the very least, we are dealing with, in terms of Ouija boards, we are dealing with the collective consciousness of, we all know that it is somebody said chat roulette. Kay Bryant said chat roulette. I don't know
Mhm.
what that is, but I know what Russian roulette is. And so at the very least, you don't know if that gun is loaded, but you know it's a gun. That's the end of the story.
You
Don't
saw
play
the
with
movies.
it.
Well,
So,
and I can tell. Here's a real quick story of how some of this stuff began. When we expanded, so we started out our store in one unit, and we realized, I think it was in April that we opened the store, and by August we realized we're not going to fit in here. We need to grow, and so we rented the unit next to us, and Eric made a door and moved a lot of our inventory in there. And the nice thing about that unit is it came with a classroom in the back. And so I was just decorating. I've got all this space. I'm going to put the fake ficus trees in there and hang up the tapestries. And I knew that for this one room, what I wanted were paint night pictures, because I thought, I'm going to go to all these thrift stores and pull up all the paint night pictures that everybody donated that they don't want anymore, because you're unguarded, you're vulnerable. When you're doing paint night, you're putting your soul and yourself on that canvas and putting
absolutely.
yourself out there. So I thought, I
Yeah.
want that. So I'm decorating and everything. And I pulled up a few other things thinking, well, this will look spooky. I'll just use this. So we got it all set. And I think I may have told this story before. I'm going to tell it anyway. So I had to go back into the shop for something. And I don't remember what it was. We had already closed down the shop for the night. Eric's out in the car. And I went in, and I had to go back to the back classroom and grab something that I left. And I got almost to the door, and I just pulled up solid. Whoa, whoa, what was that? And I hadn't turned on any lights because I know my way around my shop and I'm basically not scared of the dark.
Right.
But there was just this huge pushback, like, no, you don't get to come in here. You have to stay back. And of course, being me, I'm like, oh, bullshit, it's my store. So I turn on the light, go back in there, get what I want, and come back. And I told Eric, man, that was really weird. So the next day, we had people in the shop, and it was my usual people. And so when it got dark, I called my friend Danny over. And I'm like, because he was super sensitive. I'm like, Danny, come check this out. And I'm like, you just tell me what goes on. And so I played with it through the day, and I found out that it happened in the complete darkness.
Okay.
So I know we're about to go over. I don't want to take us over. I'll wind this up.
No,
But So I turn off all the light. Now, Danny, you got to understand, is a gigantic Mexican man who is an actual gangbanger,
Oh wow.
ex-Marine, hardcore. Like Danny don't play. Okay. Well, he does play, but I mean, he was our enforcer. Okay.
Okay.
So Danny comes, he's like, what? I'm like, no, man, I want to show you something. Come here, come here. I want to show you something. I want to show you something. So I take him over there. He gets to the exact same spot and goes, what the hell was that? And I'm like, right? Did you feel it? He goes, I ain't going in there. That's the Kukui room. And, and I was like, I know, right? Did you feel it? And he goes, hell. Well, he didn't say hell, but F yes, I felt it. I'm like, what do you want to do? And he goes, what do you think I want to do? Let's go get Gladys. Let's do it to her. So we went back over to the other room. We brought Gladys over and we're like, Gladys, look, just keep walking. Just keep walking. Just keep walking.
Go get
And
the
Gladys
medium.
goes
Yeah,
over.
Gladys.
We'll be back here. So Gladys goes up there. She's like, ah! And she like reels back at the exact same space. So we're having this little conference about, what we're going to do about this energy that's in there. And I'm saying shit like, I kind of like it because it's protective. Those are mine. I think they belong to me. And Gladys and Danny are like, well, if they belong to you, we ain't going to belong to you. We're going to leave because that's some bullshit right there. So we're having this talk about it. In comes Debbie, Gladys's partner, and she's like, what are y'all talking about? And we're still standing there in the dark, talking about this thing that won't let us in. And we're like, there's bad stuff over there. She goes, you're a bunch of pussies. And she just walks through and flings on the light. So we finally, I told you that to tell you this, as my mother would say. After dealing with the Kukuis, as Danny insisted on calling them, for about a month, Danny and Gladys finally said, if you don't find out where that's coming from, and if you don't get rid of it, we're seriously not coming back there anymore. There's nothing good about this. And so I started looking around for what might have caused it. Because I was saying, I'm sorry, guys, I can't play with you anymore because they make me tell you to go home. And so after narrowing it down energetically, it was a damn Ouija board that I had put on the board for decoration, or on the wall for decoration. Now, I had not used it to bring spirits in or anything. I thought it was just dormant because I hadn't felt anything, but something had activated it. And so I narrowed it down to that. I decommissioned it. We'll just say that. I did a heavy ritual to decommission it, and I put it aside. It's now in the custody of Santa Morte. Let's just say that. And I started looking into where that Ouija board came from. I thought my son Nathan had gotten it for me. And he's like, no, that was already there. I don't know where it came from. So we have no idea where the Ouija board came from. But the Ouija board itself had something attached to it that did go away once I decommissioned it. Wow. And so it is very haunted back there now. The spirits that are back there now work for Gladys. And so they're very good to me. There was a time for about a week or two that they were gone, and we got very concerned. And then they came back. But yes, that's my story on why you don't screw with Ouija boards.
Now, if Ouija boards are your practice, I mean, there's a way to use them very safely. Yes. But if you are just like, I'm curious, well, you know what? We'll see you in 2 weeks. I mean, that's just call Katrina or me, and we'll help you sort it out. But I think that Katrina,
you off that ledge.
I think that Katrina brought up a really important part of maybe Tamara's question of how do you tell the difference? Ask. They are compelled to tell you, and will only feed on your ignorance. There he is. So, you know, whatever the case is, whatever you're dealing with, just ask. And you will get a response. One of my shamanic teachers would say, you know, offer them love. And if they're repulsed by it, you know what you're dealing with. I mean, who doesn't want love, especially in the spirit realm? But if it's embraced, if it's If it's a communing moment where it's like, yeah, this is what I was missing, you're going to do one of two things. You're going to heal that energy, or you're going to know that it's on your side and that it's positive. And that's what Katrina was doing in the room after figuring out, what she was dealing with, for sure. Um, and I think this kind of touches on what Shannon was saying. She was mentioning that it's important to call upon the most noble of your ancestors. I think I use the phrasing high vibration, but I think we're speaking the same language, because, some of our ancestors they didn't have the best of circumstances, and they may still
Mhm.
have some saltiness or bitterness to them for what they went through. And I've heard other people talking about, if you happen to be of mixed race, and your one side of your ancestry had an issue with half of who you are, um, there's a lot of work to be done there. I'm not going to say I saw the phrasing "they hate you" and I was like, I don't know, but I won't. I can just say there's a lot of work. But calling on the highest of your ancestors, the highest
Mhm.
vibration, the most noble, the most loving, the ones that can help you through your circumstance at the moment. Don't be afraid to get specific with that either.
Yeah. I really want to clarify that for people too, because I'm surprised by the number of people who don't understand this, and this has consistently been my experience, and enough that I feel comfortable saying that this is a truism, even though it's a theory. It's most often the way I've seen things be. Spirits do not become evolved or smart or kind or benevolent because they die.
Nope.
Pretty much who you are in death or in life is who you are when you pass over. And so if your uncle was creepy and you wouldn't leave your kids with him when he was alive, don't bring him to your ancestor altar. Anybody who did not behave in a way that was full of integrity or that you admired in some way, you don't need to be invoking that energy into your life because it's problematic. They do
Absolutely.
bring their baggage to you. And if your entire family's contaminated, you go with what Gladys was talking about earlier. She actually has heroes she's not related to that she
Mm-hmm.
puts on her altar. She has people that inspired her in a certain way that are on her altar.
Mm,
So when you're looking for spirit guides, reach up and get through the fray, and bring the people that are going to be an asset to your life. If you wouldn't have dinner with them, if you wouldn't let them stay over at your house, don't have them on your ancestor altar.
absolutely. And as far as healing is concerned, I mean, you can send that love and not bring them in. You can,
Right.
pray for them, whatever you are doing, Reiki, whatever, send it to them and be done with it. But you've highlighted a great point for if you're attending a mediumship circle too. Let's say a medium brings through, and I've actually had this happen at the shop. A medium brings through somebody who, was cruel to you, physically harmed you. If you don't want to deal with that spirit, it's a goodbye. You are not obligated, and you don't have to explain. You don't have to be understood in one way or another. A no is enough. And so, what does that look like in the middle of a mediumship circle? Okay, yes, I hear that person. Okay, oh, they want to apologize. Great. Okay, next connection. Or
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm good, I'm done, moving on from there. But we are
Well,
under
and then
no
wanting just like
obligation.
just like now, them wanting to apologize, that's for them. That's
Yep.
not for you. And
Yep.
you don't have to make space for that for the living or the dead.
Not at all. Not at all. So this has been, I mean, we got deep today. I got a little out of pocket with the Ouija board thing. I just
It
feel
was cute. It was
I just
adorable.
you know playing with stuff. I mean, I encourage playing spiritually, but there is a line, guys, and it's a common sense line. It's not even a I hear time and again, well, I don't want to bring something negative through. If that's who you are, then work on that and then work on the spirituality. But for the
Hmm.
most part, if you're coming from the heart and not from the ego, and you know what ego is, oh, I want to be able to show people what I can do, or I need to prove this to myself or somebody else, don't do it. Come back later
Right.
when you feel resolved in yourself to say, you know what, if it happens or if it doesn't, I'm not bothered.
Well, and think about your spiritual life, any type of spiritual contamination, think of it as mud. Think of it as a physical contamination. If you don't want to bring something negative into your spirit, don't go out and play in the mud. Don't go to the places where there is mud. Don't let people drag you into the mud. Stay away from the mud.
This is why in the beginning parts of a spiritual journey, there's this great shedding that happens, and people are like, my friends, and I'm like, you, where you're going, you probably want to let them go, because if you bring them with you, you're going to bring all their mud with you as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but so we're at the end, which is so weird because there's still so much more to say.
Now, we had a
But
lot more to talk about today.
we did we got deep on these ancestral connections. So you guys, if you are still wanting to celebrate in one way or another, you had some beautiful insight and ideas from Katrina, and if you want to make your own deal at home, even if it's something simple, you grab a tea light and you put up a photo and you're like, you know what, just thank you. um you have some great ideas, and we are telling you, if you got nothing else from this, just do it. Nothing bad could come from it. Just don't use a Ouija board. That's the
Meditate.
end. Right.
Meditate to connect with them.
Absolutely. But we're at the end of the show. um I want to thank everybody. We had great audience engagement today, and I want to
Go back
thank
and read those
everybody.
comments, everybody. Fantastic comments.
Yes. Thank you everyone for commenting. If you're watching this on the replay, remember you can still comment, and we'll see it. Um, Connect with us via Facebook, YouTube, or any of our other outlets. Email each of us if you feel like it, and we will catch you next Monday.
Next
Good night,
Monday.
everyone.
Good night.